Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. And you are very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, fellow Star Wars fans. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. May the 4th. What a special, unique part of Star Wars tradition. Something else that Disney have bastardized. Why? Because the MCU is more important to them. And they've decided this time of the year is very important to the MCU. Everything that we love Star Wars for has been taken away by Disney. Let's look at the films that they've made. The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Rogue One, Solo, A Star Wars Story. That's quite a few films, right? So what is the issue with those films? Let's look at The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens was a film that harks back to A New Hope. But why is that? Because they made the decision that everybody hates the prequels. We know the internet does, but do you? Do I? I love the prequels. I'm allowed to like the prequels, by the way. I remember Simon Pegg, who was involved with The Force Awakens. I don't know in what kind of avenue he was involved, but he was. He said the prequels were such terrible films. So what happened because of that? Because of the perception that everybody hated the prequels, George Lucas was not allowed to be involved. Ludicrous, the man who birthed Star Wars, who created Star Wars, wasn't allowed to be involved in case people revolted, right? Because, again, on the internet, you'd read a lot of, I don't want George Lucas anywhere near Star Wars. Who are you to say what George Lucas should be involved in? George Lucas had written episode 7, 8 and 9 years ago. I don't know his take. I don't. But surely it's better than The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, although I haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker. Of course I haven't. But we've seen a trailer. We get the idea. It's a continuation of a failed idea. Because failure in film isn't about box office. It's about the perception of the audience. And the majority of the audience, although they won't say it on the internet, know that no way are Disney Star Wars movies anywhere near the quality of the prequels or the original trilogy. We all know that in reality and in honesty. Are you going to sit there straight in my face and tell me that Revenge of the Sith is a lesser movie than The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and Rogue One and Solo, A Star Wars Story? Are you really going to tell me that? Are you going to really tell me in Attack of the Clones when you see those stormtroopers, the clones marching for the first time, that iconic moment? Have you seen such an iconic moment in any of the Disney Star Wars movies? You haven't, have you? Why am I being so negative on such a special day? Well, I think it's important that we talk. We talk about the important Star Wars issues because Disney have broken our hearts over Star Wars and they've made us in a way stop caring about it. We'll always enjoy George's first 6 movies, but they've killed our love for what's to come. So Star Wars is in this really strange, anticlimactic situation where everybody kind of doesn't know how to feel about it. And we don't. The Last Jedi was that moment that divided everyone because nobody knew how to feel. Because, what's it called? I forgot already. The Force Awakens made over $2 billion globally. It was a success. Sites were talking about it. It was like Marvel. People were going nuts over it like Marvel. So then you got Rogue One, which made over $1 billion. Again, a big success. Everybody's talking about it, especially for that Vader moment, right? Which is pretty cool. But one great moment doesn't make it a great film, right? I was supposed to say maketh, but it didn't come out like that anyway. So you've got this situation. Then all of a sudden, The Last Jedi makes over $1 billion. Good money, right? Nowhere near what The Force Awakens made, but again, a good film cannot be judged on its box office, although this generation wants to do that. But then the fallout began. Now, some people were very angry about The Last Jedi because of the agenda politics. That's not what upset me. What upset me, what an underwhelming film this was. This film meant jack shit to me. I watched it and I was disappointed in it. And when they're on the Falcon at the end, all talking and smiling, I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on here? The greatest Star Wars character of all time has died, and everyone's gasbaying and smiling on the bloody Falcon. This is a moment, right? Batman v Superman is as maligned as the Star Wars prequels. But let's compare it. Let's compare it to The Last Jedi, because a lot of people have, because people say that both these films are as divisive as each other. But at least at the end of Batman v Superman, the greatest hero of all time gets a bloody funeral. People honour him. You feel like something really deep and, dark has actually happened. But in this film, the greatest hero in Star Wars history has died, and nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares that Luke Skywalker has died. This is ridiculous. Mark Hamill warned us what a clusterfuck this film was going to be. He was saying things before we even saw the movie, even before we knew how divisive it was all going to be. And we kind of thought, do you know what? Mark's a bit of a clown. Mark's a bit of a joker, But Mark wasn't happy. But then he had to keep on coming out and changing what he said because Disney were getting onto him. It's obvious, isn't it? Because actors are a commodity. Even if you're an icon like Mark Hamill, you have to toe the line. You see, to us, the public, actors seem to be the ones in front of the camera, the ones who have the all-seeing, all-being kind of importance. But in reality, it's the studios, it's the producers, the people with power, and not the actors. The people with power are never the actors. Because in Batman v Superman, let me go on to Justice League. If the actors of Justice League had any power, then Zack Snyder would never have been removed. We've seen that. We've seen their support for the man without being forced into it, right? So the reason I'm talking about Snyder and the reason I'm talking about what happened with Justice League and BVS, because it's very comparable with the prequels and with The Last Jedi. But The Last Jedi is a very different animal than The Last Jedi is a very different animal, to get my words out, than Batman v Superman or Justice League. It really, really is. Because I think people who are unhappy with The Last Jedi have logic that I can't argue with. But this goes beyond The Last Jedi, because The Last Jedi really isn't Rian Johnson's fault. Not really. He was brought in and told, this is the second part of a trilogy. But guess what, pal? You can do whatever you want. So guess what? This indie director came in with a swagger and did exactly what he wanted. And did anyone say anything to him? Yes, an actor called Mark Hamill. But of course he was ignored because he's just an actor. No matter how iconic he is, nobody was listening to him. And here's the problem. As I said, George Lucas had a 7, 8 and 9 ready to go and they didn't listen to him. George Lucas wanted to do it. He sold the company, but he still wanted to be involved. But they had decided that everybody hated the prequels. Every single Star Wars fan didn't want George anywhere near. So, in essence, the Star Wars fans who were so vocal about the prequels also caused this clusterfuck. Because what you do is you embrace Lucas's 7, 8 and 9. You make those films. You finish it off. You have Han, Luke and Leia in the Falcon together. You have them on screen together. You tell a great story because that's what George Lucas did. Told great stories. You do that, and then what do you do? Then you bring in Benioff and Weiss, right, from Game of Thrones. You say, right, guys, you're great adapters. Look at all these comics and all these great fan fictions. Pick them. Pick a story and adapt it because that's your strength. That's what you're good at. But Hollywood has gone insane with politics ever since Donald Trump's got into power. I'm no fan of Trump, I'll be clear. So there's no misunderstandings and I'm not here to defend that element, right? What I'm saying is that Star Wars was an escapism. Star Wars was fabulous. We all grew up with it. Star Wars is something that I've imparted to my nephews and nieces, that you have imparted to your children. And we were looking forward to a beautiful continuation. But Disney decided to give power to Kathleen Kennedy. Well, that's not exactly true. The truth of the matter is, it was George Lucas who insisted Kennedy was to run this whole ship. And that's what went wrong. It was even in the damn contract. I know that. You don't know that, but I know that. It was in the damn contract that they can never sack her unless he agrees, or the sale would have fallen through. And actually, that gives him a right to repurchase Lucasfilm. That's the stuff that you guys don't know. So George Lucas has some fault here. He trusted her. He trusted her, right? He still trusts her, obviously, because she's still there. Because I believe that George is a little bit more involved with Star Wars ever since the calamity that is Solo. I don't think it happened after The Last Jedi, because they thought they could deal with it. They thought that explosion could be dealt with. But Solo, a Star Wars story, really did show that they're not in control of anything. When I look at the prequels, and I think, when I watch it, when I went to cinema to see The Phantom Menace, I didn't expect it to be like the original trilogy. I think the people who were disappointed did. This is a story that George wanted to tell. He wanted to tell us, show us his vision of what the Star Wars universe was like before the trilogy. Now, in the trilogy, it's a darker universe. It's a darker time. They're at war. But what he wanted to show us through the prequels is this is an enlightened time where the Jedis are in the council. There's Padawan learners. You know, it's okay. It's not a dark time, right? And then he wants to show you how Palpatine is slowly manipulating everything. It's a great story as far as I'm concerned. I really enjoyed all three movies. I genuinely did, right? There's some really great iconic moments in The Phantom Menace. There's Darth Maul, the double lightsaber, the fight with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Totally enjoyable. Then, Attack of the Clones. I really enjoyed that film. The depth touches of Hayden Christensen's performance when darkness kicks it into Anakin. Awesome. And then the Revenge of the Sith, where he finally goes to the dark side. And that fight with Obi-Wan, which I find so emotional. You were the chosen one. It was said that you know, whatever he says, I forgot now, but, and then Anakin goes, I hate you. And it is really powerful and really emotional. So I enjoyed the prequels, and I would have enjoyed anything George threw at me. And after the prequels, you know, you get the Clone Wars, right? And the lad in charge of the Clone Wars really should be running this franchise. And it's Dave Filoni, isn't it? Dave Filoni is a genius. Literally, Lucas trained him up to replace him when Lucas owned Lucasfilm. And he's involved now. He's involved now a lot more. He's involved in the creative aspects of the franchise now. So I think maybe, just maybe, things may improve with Disney Star Wars. But I'm not holding my breath. But what happened was, at first, see, they bring J.J. Abrams in, and basically J.J., as I say, he decides we've got to kind of echo A New Hope, because that's a popular film from the popular trilogy. That's how it started. Everyone will be with us, and they were. 200 billion, right? Right? Is it 200 or 2 billion or whatever? 2 billion, right? Sorry. $2 billion globally, right? Amazing. So it looked like people were all on board. And I think to a point, The Force Awakens is an okay Star Wars movie. And J.J. Abrams had lots of kind of things going on with that film that got people excited. But then you get The Last Jedi. And then people start saying, well, you're only upset with it because it didn't give you what you wanted. If I have a fruit pastel, I expect it to taste a certain way. That's the way it is. Everyone has expectations. But what Rian Johnson did was take those expectations and in fact surprised the audience. But he didn't surprise the audience in a good way. He surprised the audience in a horrible way, because he gave us things we didn't want. We didn't want the things to happen that happened, right? And that's the thing. So if you have good twists in a film, everyone's with it because it's awesome and exciting. But when you kill off a character like Snoke, who's intriguing and evil and comes across as a villain with potential, you start asking questions. Why did you do that? Of course, he may not be dead, but it seemed like it, didn't it? And then what'd you leave us with? Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren, who is Han and Leia's son, right? That should be pretty compelling, right? He's obsessed with his grandfather, Darth Vader. Also very compelling. It wasn't articulated in a compelling way, and he as a character just hasn't worked. I don't know. I really don't know what J.J. Abrams has in store for this one. It'll be interesting. It's either going to be very average, mediocre, or a big letdown, or something we haven't been expecting and something we're going to be really excited by. Who knows what's going to happen next? I do know one thing, that Star Wars was a very proud thing. And we're still celebrating May the 4th. But May the 4th has been taken away from us. Not the celebrations, but that was a great thing. And it's a little thing to have films released at a certain date, but it was another unique thing in terms of Star Wars. And they took away everything. But they weren't willing to make new creative films. Star Wars, I mean, yes, it's kind of got a story. You've got the kind of Skywalkers in it. But Star Wars is set in space, in a galaxy far, far away. There's many planets and worlds we haven't seen from the Star Wars universe. They could have done anything. But first we needed to see Lucas's 7, 8 and 9. And they weren't willing to do that. And this is where their greatest mistake was. Because Disney don't understand great storytelling and escapism. No. They don't. Disney, right, if you look at their history, were a studio who made children's films and animated movies. They had no experience in making films of this level. You will throw the MCU at me and I'll say, yes, Kevin Feige is a genius. He is. He has found a way to make films, a series of films, and it works. That's not because of Disney, that's because of him. They allow him to do whatever he wants because he brings in the money. But eventually, he'll go. And you'll see how they mismanage it. But with Kathleen Kennedy, there was no way she was ever going to be able to pull this off on her own. She's never been on her own. She's a good businesswoman, but she knows nothing about films, even though she's worked on a lot of them, because other people were doing the important things. I don't have any personal issues with Kathleen Kennedy, but the issue is right now that Star Wars is dead to a lot of people, and it needs something. It really needs not to be owned by Disney, but that's not going to happen. So the future now, we're going to find out. We're going to find out if The Rise of Skywalker is any good. We're going to see if Benioff and Weiss can give us a great trilogy. And for crying out loud, Rian Johnson apparently is still doing his trilogy. I hope it's a good one. Do I have faith in him? Of course I don't. Of course I don't have faith that he's going to give us something great. If you're Disney, you bring in the best people who understand about fantasy. You bring in people who have written the best-selling Star Wars novels. You bring in people who understand. The MCU is run by people who understand Marvel comics. I mean the good Marvel comics of the past, not the ones of the present day. And until they do that, until they understand what they're doing and what their plan is, it's no good. Kathleen Kennedy put on a bunch of t-shirts, had a couple of other girls with her that said the Force is female. But the Force isn't female. Star Wars is for everyone. Every single person, men, women, boys and girls already love Star Wars. Everyone was already accepted into this fandom and franchise. No one was telling anyone you don't belong here because you're a man or a woman or a boy or a girl or black, white or Asian. No one was doing it. It was a very inclusive fandom, just like the Star Trek one is. So this is the problem with this generation, this political mentality where they talk about representation, because in fandoms, the representation is there. Maybe in the actual movies or TV shows, there's not enough representation. I'll let other people decide that. But in terms of the fandom, what she did was damaging. Because once you politicize TV and films to that scale and tell people these are our political beliefs and anyone who believes these beliefs are wrong, then you're going to cost yourself a lot of money. It led to it with Solo, a Star Wars story. What happens next is up to them. But these people won't change. So we go back to celebrating May the 4th, watching those beautiful original 6 Star Wars films and treasure them. And maybe someone somewhere will actually take over Star Wars one day and make us proud again. I hope so. May the 4th be with you. Happy Star Wars Day, everyone.